Welcome to Meeting the Inconceivable, a podcast exploring Zen koans, dreams, and the creative life produced by Pacific Zen Institute. Pacific Zen has a legacy of preserving and reimagining the koan tradition to meet our own times. With a lively community of artists, innovators, and seekers of all kinds that extends worldwide, our mission is to create a culture of transformation through meditation, koans, the arts, and conversations about the deepest matters. In this episode, Roshi John Tarrant takes up a koan commentary from the Blue Cliff Record, in which a student asks, "What is the way?" And the teacher replies, "Dragon murmurings in a withered tree." The exchange continues by asking, when the thoughts in your head are all used up, why does joy remain? Tarrant offers many stories and anecdotes alive with this question. When we stop chasing about, he says, the whole universe is here. All we have to do is look and listen.
So welcome. I'm glad to be here. It's wonderful to be in session, and it just feels so, I don't know, almost reckless in its degree of I've nothing to do. I'm in session. And Linji's famous thing. And I think it was Wang Bo said, I'm just someone with whose empty hands, idle hands. So that's what we are right now. And how do I want to go into this? I want to go in with a couple of images. You know, the image of meditation is that the mind stops doing its thing as much, or the mind might be doing its thing, but we don't climb on the wagon. Or we maybe climb on the wagon, but we don't take ourselves so seriously about it. So at some level, some kind of grace appears. And, you know, the famous thing about make yourself, the student said, well, I really must like get free, awaken, things like that. And the teacher said, well, I'll give you the medicine we use for reviving dead horses. And sounds good. And then the teacher said, well, you know, make yourself like a withered log, you know, a dead log. And so it grows, nothing grows, you know. And in fact, it's an interesting thing, I have a dead log outside that doesn't rot. It's like a Monterey pine, and it hasn't sort of, if you try to cut it, it does that thing where it won't quite rot and disappear. And we know that that's because there are mycelia feeding it, you know, the bun. So it's sort of, you know, sort of bardo of its own, you know. Whether that's the image, I don't know. I think the image is probably pretty simple. Make yourself so you're not generating things. You're not chasing out after things. You're not deciding this and that, and you'll notice as you begin to meditate, you notice how much your mind does, what a hardworking little citizen your consciousness is, and even when you didn't ask it to. So it's kind of a thing, you know. And we can let it rest in a way. And what meditation does then is it sort of gives us, instead of like chasing after things, it gives us something else to do. So you have a koan. And the koan might be, if you go about like this, when will you meet today? Or it might be, make yourself a raft. Yeah. When you can't go anywhere, when you're stuck, there's nowhere to go, and where do you go? It's kind of like how the whole country and the whole world feels right now, right? And so when will you meet today? That might be what you have in your consciousness. And it's still not quite being a still, but it's sort of an interesting thing because you realize it doesn't really matter what's in my consciousness. I'm always thinking, oh, I should have this, I should have that, I should be feeling differently. This is what consciousness thinks its job is to feel differently, actually. And but au contraire, consciousness actually doesn't have a reasonable job. And so what you'll notice is that if you put a koan in, at some stage you stop doing it. And you realize how much work it is to be the you that you think you are. And it's not needed, And so that, this is what everyone will notice, and we all forget we all notice it when we don't need to notice it because we're free, and we all forget it when we need it because we don't feel free. So there you are. And so the idea of the withered log, well, it's sort of an unattractive image in a way. There's a very old one in the Dharma, a dead tree, it's like that. The idea is to just let everything come to rest. An ice field is another image that's occasionally used, but let everything come to rest. And one of the old teachers said, then you hear dragon murmurings in the withered tree. And someone asked well, what does dragon murmurings mean? And the teacher said, I have joy. Like that, I have joy. And so there'll be a certain kind of, when we're not chasing about after things, there'll be a certain kind of freedom and delight. That's that expansive thing. And if you just take a second and check inside and you're not chasing anything, like right now, for example, just pretend you're a Zen student in a retreat. And right now, it could happen. Awakening could appear right here now. Right? So check in, and it's sort of, oh, I forgot to have a problem. That's kind of beginning of something, isn't it? I forgot to have a problem. I forgot that I don't. The world is going to hell in a handbasket, or maybe some other vehicle, some other conveyance, but I forgot that. I forgot the exterior problem and I forgot the interior problem. And so just again, that mysterious and elemental joy of being alive. And the trees have it and the sky has it. And you have it. And the only thing you can't do is you can't then explain yourself. You can't justify yourself. You can't explain others. You can't fix them. You can't correct them. You can't critique yourself. The usual stuff. All the stuff the mind thinks is actually its job. That's chasing after stuff. You think, dang, so there's that sort of part of the mind thinks, but surely I can some little thing like, let's fix global warming, or whatever it is. Racism, we can do racism, right? So all these painful, amazingly difficult, dark things, and we can't. However, we can walk through the valley, and we might get a nourishment from walking through the valley that we did not know about. And so I invite you to take a little journey with me. So you're walking downhill, you're walking through grass, and you have no concerns. There's nothing you need to fix right now. You don't need to answer that text. You don't need to explain the tech better so somebody does it better. You don't need to You don't need to do anything really. You're just walking. Perhaps you can hear the birds. Perhaps, let's say you can hear the birds. And the leaves just because of the heat and the dryness, the leaves are starting to turn early here, but perhaps the leaves are turning. Yeah, let's have the leaves be turning, and you're walking, and it's sort of sweet. And after a while, you forget. You just become lost in your walking. You drown in your walking, and you come into tree. There's an archway, and you come into trees, an arch of great trees, and you walk into the trees, and it's quieter in here. And the things you were thinking don't seem quite to stand up to the great trees, so you forget about them. And it's not like you forget about them, but because some of them might be important, but you trust that they'll come back when you need them. And then you find yourself, you have a lantern in your hand. And there's something amusing about this, and you're walking through the forest with a lantern in your hand. And you feel that the forest welcomes you. In the light, you can see the path. And you can hear rustling, and you hear the birds settling down, going to sleep, preparatory to going to sleep, and then the last few birds sort of hawking about looking for insects before the first bats come on. And here you are, and you're going deeper down into the valley, carrying your lantern. And you realize that this is the great thing to do, to be walking in the valley, carrying a lantern. You have no other task in this life. If this is all you do, this moment is this is all you do, you will have fulfilled your destiny in coming to the earth. When you hear the soft movement of your feet and you hear sound, perhaps it's a deer moving about, or who knows, maybe a little bobcat or something. Or if you're in Australia, it will be a little kangaroo settling down, restless, wherever you are. And then you come to a great tree, and somehow you just don't want to go any further. And it's not really your business that you don't want to go any further. You just don't go any further. And without picking or choosing, and you just sit down. The ground is warm underneath you and soft. And there's a low branch, and you just put the lantern on the branch. And here you are. And you sit, and you realize Shakyamuni is sitting with you. And the great dragon is sitting with you, and the valley spirit. And there are so many things in your life that are revealed by that lantern, that all the turns you made, all the wrong turns, they brought you here, and here is the right place. So it's not the wrong turn. And then you realize, and then you have the thought, that must be what haiku is about, just those little lanterns, The secret is the lemon tree in the moonlight, that kind of thing. The secret is waiting and wondering what I'm doing. And that's good enough for the moment. So we stop rejecting and stop. In the light of the lantern, we realize that every moment has that glow. And the moment when a fear comes up, we stop trying to get rid of the fear, and if you enter the fear, it too sparkles. And light comes from it. You enter boredom, you find that it's just a way of holding back from life, keeping hold of my idea of myself. And so meanwhile, you're just sitting here in the forest with a lantern. Occasional moth wanders by. You hear the night birds, the owls, hear the rustle of the animals, but somehow you know you're okay. And then gradually you disappear into a formless meditation. And then you meet tonight. So good enough, I think. So that's hanging lanterns in the valley. And the valley spirit never dies, as they say, so that lantern is there for always. And every lantern you've ever hung in your life, we weren't born and we don't die, one of the old teachers said, but you can feel the truth of it. And the way each moment of life is a gate and opens and keeps opening. There's some great couple of things I want to read you. This is, some of us have been saying quite a lot about the Tang dynasty, and which was a time of great flowering, but also a very hard time when people starved and there was civil war and, gangs invading places, and it was a hard time and terrible leadership. And so one of the ways to be a bodhisattva was, to just, you walk through that valley holding a lantern. And I had a dream that I met Li Bai, the great Chinese poet, Li Po, Li Bai. They're both names of his. And he had a wine glass in his hand, which is very Li Bai. And he wanted me to come and join him. And it was kind of sweet. And he's actually in a valley, it's so great. And we're in this valley, and he's got this nice big old ramshackle house behind him. The sort of place you can have all sorts of friends and guests. And he said, I've got 500 million books. He knew this like bait for me. He's staying there with his wine cup, actually, a Chinese wine cup. And I don't know. And I just sort of smiled and greeted him. And it was like, I'll see you sometime. When I woke up, I thought, you only have time to read that many books if you're in the underworld already. But I'm just going to be a while, Li Bai. But here's one of his poems. Going up north from the town of Yunyang, I've seen many rich merchants on the riverbanks. In the Wu land, even buffaloes pad hard in the dog days. Look how hard the laborers are pulling a barge. The muddy water is undrinkable, every kettle half filled with mud after being boiled. Far away comes the work song the men are chanting. It breaks my heart and my tears flow. Thousands of men quarry these huge stones, but they can hardly ship them to the riverside. Look at giant stones scattered and abandoned. This sorrow makes me weep. So one of the things he did was, to hear the cries of the world, to feel the cries of the world. And then you can feel, oh, we're still saying this poem 1,000 years later. It's a lamp. It's one of the lamps. And the lamps are just the moment, the lamps are the moments of transformation like that, Here's another. Ask me why I stay on Green Mountain, I smile and do not answer, my heart is at ease. I like that. You don't have to explain happiness. You don't have to explain being. You don't have to explain the light that is in you when you stop chasing today. Oh, and here I am, and I look at your face, and we're together, And so, ask me why I stay in Green Mountain, I smile and do not answer. My heart is at ease. Peach blossoms on flowing water slip away into the distance. This is another world which is not of people. This is another world which is not about human things. That one's called Question and Answer in the Mountains. And here's another. There are many great Chinese poets of this era we're talking about, but today I'm just going to read from Li Bai. Green mountains lie across the northern outskirts of the city. White water winds around the eastern wall. Once we make our parting here in this place like a solitary tumbleweed. You will go 10,000 miles. Once we part, you'll go 10,000 miles. So he also chronicles, the parting. You know. Floating clouds are the thoughts of the wanderer. Setting sun is the mood of the old friend. He's the old friend. With a wave of the hand, now you go from here. Your horse gives a whinny as it departs. And so, the thing about the laborers, or the thing about, he's got a lot of poems in which he's a woman lamenting the soldiers away at the frontier because of the imperial ambitions, I send, in one of his poems, which I can't seem to find right now, village women are sewing winter robes for their husbands who are away, and they don't even know if they'll get the robes or not. They're 1,000 miles away when everything got transported on foot or horseback, like that. And so you can tell he had a feel both for the mystery that we're sunk in, but you could tell the mystery it's in the simple qualities of life. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with the sorrow or the anxiety or the longing, and it can't be helped, Fate is bigger than us, And here's Du Fu. River blue, the birds seem whiter, the mountains green, flowers about to flame. Spring, I see, has passed again. What year will it be when I go home? So, stranded by civil war and things like that, So this is his Li Bai again. Li Bai wrote a lot of poems in different voices, laborers, courtesans at the court, just anybody. He respected everybody, When the grasses of the north wind are just emerald threads, the mulberry trees of the capital hang branches heavy with green. The days when you long to return, those are the times when my heart aches. The spring breeze, I do not know it. In other words, when you long to return, I feel it, my heart aches. The spring breeze, I do not know it. What business does it have coming in here around the silk curtains that hold my bed? What business does the spring wind have coming through the curtains around my bed? So something about, you can tell when you have a lantern, you have to use it anywhere. You have to walk in all the places of your life. And it's not because you've got to be disciplined and stern and courageous, although if you're that, good. But it's also because the whole of your life has a nobility and truth to it. Thusness, the exact quality of existence that everything has that's so beautiful. And so that's what we see when the mind just settles. We can just see that, that's all. There's no great mystery to making your mind settle, having your mind be free. It just you just forgot to torment yourself for a bit, that's all. But if you like tormenting yourself, that too is you're full of longing or fear or something like that. And you'll find that somebody said this great thing to me, this person who became a teacher said, she was really smart, and so she had experiences quickly in koan work. And then she said, so she got, most people, they get afraid and then it disappears and they have some sort of awakening. It went the other way around for her. She had an awakening and then she thought of all the things that were wrong. And in a way, she was testing and tasting and can it go here and can it go here? But then she'd get overwhelmed by the anxiety. And so for her, the slow integration was, oh, what if I already know this? What if I'm truly honest, I already know that this is the great life. And I have no other choice. I have no other great life to live than this one. Yeah. And So if I'm afraid, that can't be wrong. And I think, anybody who's reading media is afraid right now. If you're afraid, you probably came by it honestly. But it's also true that this is our life, And we came by that honestly too. Here I am. And then you'll see that the lamps are everywhere too. And like, the secret is the lemon tree in the moonlight. Just that. And it is. You can tell, yeah, that's it. The lemon tree knows. And so do I. And so then you find that whole thing about, already quoted about, you forget yourself, but you unite with something. Something becomes you, the tree, the person. And you realize that there's something to do with it. Like when you come to meet a teacher for interview, that's what happens too. Like, you don't explain yourself because you're not interested. Yeah. An explanation is a moving away from yourself. You don't apologize for yourself because, you're not interested, right? And what are you apologizing for? Is like, last night I was sitting, I like sitting in the moonlight, and I wake up and it's a pattern I set very young when I started meditating, and who knew I'd be stuck with it, but I am. So I'm up. It's like, I don't know, about 2:00 in my time. So actually, you guys on the East Coast are just getting up then. So, and so I'm meditating, and young Ms. Grey Fox came by, and had a date or two maybe from the plate. And then I brought the plate in, not knowing, I don't know why. And so then I'm sitting, and then I see this really small possum, like it's like a half-grown possum, like it's just in the moonlight. And possums have that funny wavering walk, and you can tell they somehow, I don't know if they experience themselves in that way, but they look touchingly clueless, to me. And they're sort of intimately clueless, and there's something tender about them. And then it just comes straight up onto the porch and looks around, has a drink of water and looks around. So I open the door and I throw out a date for it. And it doesn't, its eyesight's not very good, so it doesn't even know what happened. Something happened. What happened? And I close the door. And so I guess it didn't have a clue where the date went or anything. So, I thought, okay, so I opened the door and put the plate out, and I figured it'll find the plate, And I thought, it's good to be good to the animals right now. We're all in this together, And and the possum, it scuttles away really fast, in this sort of funny wavering walk, and disappears. And I said, oh, well, I guess that, not sure that worked, but we'll give it time. And so I sit down and go back to meditating. And then about half an hour later, I see the possum walk across the courtyard. And then about another 10 minutes, and suddenly it's on the deck again. It sneaks around on the deck, and it has some water and just keeps looking at the dates. And then it takes a date, and it just pours up on the plate and takes the date. And it's this tiny little possum. So one date is a lot for it. And it takes the date and it eats it, and it just looks around and then just walks off. So it's like, that's a lantern. It's one of those lantern moments. It's also a moment of meeting. Yeah. And I kind of like possums because people, often mistreat them, and I don't know. Anyway, I feel like we're in it together, as I said. And so it was sort of, it too has the great life, being a possum, And you'll see when you meet like that, it's a true meeting. You realize, oh, I am a possum, I am a tree. And then when you really meet a person, like an interview, that's what love is actually, oh, I see. And it's not something we intend. You don't have to make a resolution. It's not a spiritual practice. It's something that's involuntary. Oh, I see the possum, I see the tree. I am the possum, I am the tree. I see you, I am you. So it's like that. The way Li Bai is the river woman waiting for her son, hoping her husband will come home or her son doesn't get killed, or like that, or the soldier off on the border. And also the drunken poet who's trying to sing about all this, and all that. So, yeah. And the last lantern story I want to tell is quite a long time ago. I used to do, there was about a bit over a decade, I did a 7-day session a year in Australia. And we, it took us a while to work out when to have it, and it's kind of like Zoom things. It was the Wild West sort of thing. What's the tech of, oh my God, we got midwinter in a cold area where it's below freezing a lot of the time. That's how do you do it intense, that sort of thing. So anyway, we did that. But one of the things we would do is that, particularly if the night was warm enough, we started doing spring and autumn, which were great. Then we put lanterns out in the meadow, way out in the bush, and there were kangaroos would come through. Wombats actually were very common. Wombats lived under they had a big palace under a chestnut tree, and we'd see them coming and going while we were doing zazen. And there were horses who weren't wild, but they weren't contained, and they would gallop through at night. It was kind of rather magnificent. You see in the moonlight that little glints of horse eyes and things. But we would put lanterns out, and then we'd walk around. We'd walk around the lanterns doing meditation and chanting Kanzeon. Kanzeon, Namu Butsu, Yo Butsu Uen, Yo Butsu Uen, Bupo So, and Jo Rakuga Jo So, and Kanzeon Bon, and Kanzeon Nen Nen Jushinki, Nen Nen Furi Shin. So we just chant like that, but then there were some sopranos there, and they'd start singing up here, and then everybody else would try and harmonize, and it was kind of great. So you can do a lot with lanterns. And that's a light is still in my life. I can feel it now. And I would say to you that that's what we're doing. Each of your rooms, when I look into your rooms, it's a lantern like that, And each of the things, each of the moments, it's like one lantern contains all of them, And so each of the rooms, contains your heart and your hopes and your love of the world, and your love of each other. Everybody thinks they know about love, but if you know about love, you don't know what it is. If you know about love, you don't actually. So it's something that it's here already, and we meet it with each other. And that's the lantern, really, that we love this world and we're part of it and we're dependent on it, and we object to many of the things that happens, and that's part of the love of it too. So we're walking through the valley holding our lanterns. And I don't know if I want to say anything else here. Yeah, I can say something, maybe I'll say tomorrow night more about, those states of mind when you do get the withered log thingy happens. the withered log happens, the withered stump. That's just that's like step one of a process. And that you can't stay there. But it's also true that it just happens to you, And you can feel it just happens to you, and then you feel that joy come, and perhaps you feel tears. One of the things in session is you can tell if you explain your tears, you're moving away from them. Tears are just tears, right? It's just the beauty of, they're the tears of the way, and this dissolving, and that's part of the love of the way. So I guess that's where I want to end with we'll spend the night sitting in the forest with a lantern. And we're stuck with that image now. But then there'll be lanterns all around. There'll be luminous creatures come through, Beetles, mushrooms will glow. All sorts of things happen in a forest at night.
To support these episodes or learn more about upcoming programs and retreats at Pacific Zen Institute, visit us at pacificzen.org. You'll find details on John Tarrant's Sunday Talks, our Open Temple morning meditation, and our Zen Luminary series featuring intimate conversations with scholars, poets, and teachers of Koan Zen. Thanks for listening.